Frankel, in my opinion, is the best horse that's ever been.
He's a phenomenal racehorse.
He's a joy to see, and I think the only word can describe him is incredible, really.
He's one of the most phenomenal horses of all time, and it's a thrill to watch him race.
Ascot is a stage for the final act in the career of the best racehorse in the world, arguably the greatest of all time. On Qipco British Champions Day, Frankel will be asked to dazzle us for one last time. But in the Champion Stakes, he must conquer his toughest challenger yet, French superstar and last year's winner, Sidas de Zegel. Her Majesty the Queen will be on hand to witness the showdown. But she will also be hoping Carlton House can first gain a victory of his own in the most appropriate of races, the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. In the Fillies and Mares Stakes, Woz is out to prove her good fortune isn't in the past tense. Trainer James Fanshawe is hoping Society Rock can keep on rolling in the Sprint Stakes. And Fame and Glory returns for more of the latter in the race he won last year, the Long Distance Cup. After 6 months and 30 races, it all comes down to this: 5 championship events, £3 million in prize money, one day. Qipco British Champions Day. It's where the best take their bow. It has been the most fabulous year for sport in Britain, but in the world of horse racing, the best is yet to come with the running of Champions Day. Lydia Hislop and Steve Mellish are here with me to preview the 5 races, and Lydia, it does promise to be something very special.
Well, it's the culmination of the entire season's work, all 5 categories building towards a conclusion, and of course Frankel back to the day that he starred in last year in the QE2, this time around in the Champion Stakes, and facing his toughest task yet. I feel like we say that quite often, but it really is true.
Steve, Frankel faces his toughest test, plus we've got 4 other fabulous races as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, he is the star of the show, and it's fitting that he's in the final race this year. But there's all sorts. I mean, every division is fascinating. You know, the stayers have been taking it in turns to win, and sprinters too. And you've got Celebration breathing a huge sigh of relief that Frankel isn't there facing him. Oh, yeah, it's a tremendous day, but it is topped off by Frankel.
Are you able to enjoy watching Frankel, or is there nervous anticipation?
I wish it could just be unsullied enjoyment, but I'm so nervous whenever he runs, because what I want him to do is show what he's capable of, and every time he runs I'm terrified that he's not, for some reason something's going to go wrong, and the release comes when his sort of joyful bound gets into stride and he starts, you know, strutting his stuff, and that's a tremendous relief. I wish I could just enjoy it, but there's just too much anxiety involved in it, really.
What about you, Steve? Nerves of steel?
No, I'm always anxious. I mean, excited. Really excited, and but each time it seems to be a slightly different test. You know, we went to York finding out will he stay the 10 furlongs. This time it might be will he handle very soft ground. So yeah, I guess that's what horse racing's about. You want to give your top horses as many different tests as possible, but so far he's come through them all with flying colours.
I pace immediately before a Frankel race. I've done it in a betting shop in Finsbury Park. I've done it in the Silver Ring at York. I pace prior to a Frankel race. Sort of look at my feet and pace.
Okay, well, no pacing just for the
Never.
moment. We're going to preview the 5 races, and first of all, it's the Qipco Long Distance Cup. 12 months ago, Fame and Glory won the Qipco Long Distance Cup. He's back to try again, and we can hear from his trainer, Aidan O'Brien.
We've been happy with him since the Curragh. He's came forward nicely to the Curragh, and he just needs to jump forward more, and we think he has. So we're looking forward to him running the next day.
Was it the plan for him to be ridden that aggressively at the Curragh last time?
I know we were going to let him roll along into a nice rhythm if there wasn't pace, and I think that's what Jamie did, and obviously in the soft ground he did that, but obviously got a bit tired. He hadn't done that in a while, so but we think he's improved fitness-wise since then.
Well, Fame and Glory was the best stayer around last year, Steve, but he hasn't been this year. Any reasons in your mind why?
When I went to Aidan's earlier in the year, he was talking about now he's got a bit older, you can sort of only really get him right a couple of times a year. And I think the Gold Cup and this race were his targets. The trouble is, he didn't really perform in the Gold Cup, and you just wonder how much of his ability he retains. At his best, he'd have a great chance, but is he still capable of performing to his best?
Colourvision enjoyed the finest moment of his career here at Ascot at the Royal Meeting, but it hasn't been plain sailing since then for him.
It meant that he had to carry a Group 1 penalty in Group 2 races subsequently. Now, he also didn't handle the track, I thought, at Goodwood. And in the Doncaster Cup, I thought he was undone by too steady a pace. Now, he ran well in the Cadran, a good third, but it was on very heavy ground, over 2.5 miles, and that's quite a quick reappearance. And also, you know, one of the reasons why we've come to this point on the track here at Ascot to talk about the Kipco Long Distance Cup is because it's where the round course and the straight course meet. And the round course, given the rain that we've had, is likely to be much more testing than the straight course, which is newer and more free draining. So I think in all likelihood, Colourvision comes here off the back of a hard race and is likely to have testing ground again, and that means that I think circumstances are conspiring against him.
One of the most consistent stayers around for the last couple of seasons is Opinion Poll. We can hear from his trainer, Mahmoud Al-Zarouni.
He's in full training, he's doing everything well, he's in good form, and hopefully he'll be ready for the Ascot.
Normally he's had quite busy seasons, so are you confident you'll have him at 100% for that race at Ascot?
Yeah, I mean, he's in good form, to be honest, and the piece of work he did, 2 days ago, was very good, and I think you will see him running a good race.
He was leaned on, well, bumped a couple of times by Colourvision when second in the Ascot Gold Cup. I didn't think it made a difference to the result. I think that Opinion Poll, when he was younger, trained by Michael Jarvis, showed his very best form when there was plenty of cut in the ground. We're expecting that to be the case for the Kipco Long Distance Cup. I think he's never had that particular set of circumstances in a top-class staying race before. I think that might give him the edge he needs.
There were very high expectations for Sadler's Rock as a stayer this season, but Stevie hasn't lived up to those.
He needs a sound surface and a strong pace, and he's not had that once this year. He got away with it in the Goodwood Cup. Trouble is, he's almost certainly going to have soft ground again this year, so you might have to wait till next year before he finally realises all his potential.
He's been a very unlikely diva, by which I mean Sadler's Rock, not Steve, in that he needs a very particular set of circumstances in order to give of his best.
The honour of who's going to top the long distance category, I think, is still up for grabs. Enki and Camelot are at the moment at the top of the category, but it's possible a horse like Brown Panther, who's unexposed over this distance, could come along and sweep everything before him.
Yeah, he's really interesting. He's a sort of a new kid. He's not taken on all these horses in the races we've been talking about, and he's got good form in our St Leger last year. He ran really well in the Irish St Leger recently. He's bred to come into his own over 2 miles, so he could improve at the trip. I just think he's a really interesting runner.
Ile de Ré has had a tremendous season. He's won the Northumberland Plate and the Chester Cup, but it's another big step required here.
It is, but he's got Donald McCain, his trainer, on his side. You know, another horse improved by Donald McCain's shock. This horse had been running over hurdles for another trainer previously, and presumably Donald's thinking about going hurdling with him or even chasing again. But why not come to Champions Day in conditions that are going to ideally suit? He could be the overpriced horse because he's going to love the ground, and he stays all day, all night, all the following day, all the following night, and all the following week as well. No, stamina, no problem. Have I made that clear?
Howell Fez won the Cumberland Lodge Stakes here at Ascot last time out. We can hear from her trainer, Marcus Tregoning.
Johnny Murtagh rode her at Ascot the other day, as you know, in the Cumberland Lodge, and I think he's very pleased with her and said she stayed really well. So we'd quite like to find out if she will, and it just might help me keep her for next year if she looks like she'll really stay.
What are your impressions? What your gut feeling as to whether or not she will?
Oh, I think she will. I trained Madame and she stayed really well. Got a mile and 6 very easily, and Howell Fez is a big, strong galloper.
She's a big, strapping, genuine galloping mare, and she'll handle the conditions and she'll run really well, but she's a free goer. I'm not sure stepping up to 2 mile will suit her.
What do you think, Lydia?
Stamina is definitely the problem. Conversely, she's the kind of girl you'll struggle to get to stay the night.
Opinion poll for me.
Opinion poll for me. I think the likely testing conditions are going to give him the edge that he needs.
Brown Panther for me. He steps up to 2 mile for the first time. I think it'll really suit.
The Speedsters will do battle in the Kipco British Champions Sprint Stakes. Last year, trainer James Fanshawe won it with Deacon Blues. He'll be trying again, this time with Society Rock. We can hear from James now.
He's been in good form. He's come out of the Betfred Sprint Cup in good form, and he seems nice and bright, and he worked last Saturday and seems on target for the Kipco Sprint. He won the Golden Jubilee in 2011, then he ran a really good race in the Prix Maurice de Geest. And I think that was sort of really the end of him after that, because he sort of missed a break at Haydock, and then, you know, with his record at Ascot, I ran him in the 2011 Kipco Sprint behind Deacon Blues. Hopefully he'll be in better form this year.
Some people may have doubted Society Rock's position near the top of the pecking order of the sprinters, but he's proved it again this season that he is there.
He really has, with that win in the Haydock Park Sprint Cup. He rather fluffed the start in the Golden Jubilee at Royal Ascot over this course and distance. Now, it hasn't been in evidence on his subsequent 2 starts, so I'm thinking that that was just a one-off blip, but I suppose that's in the back of my mind. That said, he's got a really good record here, and the form of his Sprint Cup win has since been franked by the runner-up Gordon Lord Byron winning the Foray in France. So it's strong form, he handles soft ground, he loves the track, he comes here in a strong position.
A horse who's been around for some time is Godolphin's Delegator. In fact, Steve, he's run some excellent races here. St James's Palace Stakes as a 3-year-old, he's only just beaten.
Yeah, he was trained as a classic type in his early days, but he won over 6 furlongs at York last year. Tried over various distances since, and we haven't seen him for a while, but you think that's a positive?
Yeah, he's got a tremendous record, fresh. I think in the last 3 seasons in the UK, on his reappearance, he's won. He won in Meydan this year after, again, a long break, and I expect that he will put up a good performance. French filly Whiz Kid has some outstanding form to her name, over 5, 6 and 7 furlongs, but her only wins have been over 5, Steve.
Yeah, I've been fooled by her a few times. I think maybe a strongly run 5 furlongs seems to bring out the absolute best of her, and she certainly got that in the Abbey last time, and under a really good ride by Gerard Mosse, sort of nabbed the race later on, let the leaders get on with it and grabbed it late on. She gives a strong impression. She should be fully effective at 6, and she ran well in this race last year, but I think probably a strongly run 5 is best.
Slade Power has won 4 of his last 5 starts, and he seems to be making the progress of his career at the right time.
He's the unknown quantity in the race. He's very, very progressive. He seems to be quite versatile when it comes to ground. He's trained by Edward Lynham, who, of course, was responsible for Soul Power, who's won the Group 1 Nunthorpe and is a top-class sprinter, so he's in the right hands. It's hard to sort of tip him up in a race of this quality, but it would be no surprise if he ran fantastically well and goes on to be quite a source of power in this category of race in the next seasons.
Casting our memories back to the Royal Meeting, and Restia d'Argent put up a tremendous performance here behind Black Caviar, but is it one that you can fully believe?
That is top class form, but she hasn't followed it up in 2 runs since. You wouldn't be surprised back over the same course and distance if she suddenly pulled a similar run out of the bag. At the same time, you couldn't with any confidence predict it.
Delegator is at his best after a long layoff, and I think he'll run a very good race in the Champions Sprint Stakes.
It's hard to think of a negative for Society Rock, therefore he's the tip.
It's Society Rock for me. I think it's, on Haydock form, the best sprinter around, and he'll have no trouble with the conditions.
Kipco British Champions Day will see the series' top jockey and trainer crowned for 2012. While Aidan O'Brien may have already bagged the trainer's trophy, the jockey's prize could go right to the wire. Joseph O'Brien leads William Buick by 15 points, and he has the same margin for error over Tom Queally in the race for the top. All 3 riders have each won 4 series races to date and could earn up to 20 points per mount at Ascot. Buick and trainer John Gosden would need an afternoon as remarkable as their year to topple the father and son O'Brien combination. But as Gosden is also chasing the trainer's title for the overall turf racing season, he has an additional motivation to field a strong Champions Day team. Unless the day goes remarkably badly for both of those camps, lifting Queally to the top of the jockeys' rankings for a second year may be beyond even Frankel. At last, a limitation.
Time to switch our attention now to the ladies in the Kipco British Champions Fillies and Mare Stakes. And first of all, we'll talk about Was, who's trained in Ireland by Aidan O'Brien. She's had a tremendous season. Has she shown any signs of ill effects from this tough year?
No, we're happy with her. Ran a very good race in York. I think the last day the ground got slow enough for her. Wants a nice ground as well, but she's a hardy lady, and we still think she's progressing. She's in good form. I think she gets a mile and a half well. A mile and a quarter is fine, but she probably wants a strongly run mile and a quarter. Probably a mile and a half is ideal for her.
She was unfortunate, I thought, in the Irish Oaks. She got quite severely hampered, would have finished much closer on that day. She ran really well, but was comprehensively beaten by Sharetta in the Yorkshire Oaks. I think she's a proper staying Group 1 filly. The positives are she stays 12 furlongs really well. Yeah. She'll handle the soft ground. I think she lacks a touch of brilliance, but she's solid.
Scirocco Star was runner-up in the English and Irish Oaks. Her trainer is Hughie Morrison.
It was very deep ground when she was second in the Irish Oaks, and it was pretty similar ground at Launchal.
She looked a little unlucky the way the race panned out with that sprint and in that ground.
Yeah, I think the winner's good. I thought she was very impressive when she won her sort of the French Oaks trial back in May. I saw her win there, and she won really well. And she just got they got first run on us. We were sort of held in for a critical half a dozen strides, which made the difference. She's just extraordinarily tough. She never seems to have much of a race, which leaves you to wonder if she's just saving a little bit for a rainy day. But she's a serious quality filly and deserves to win on the big stage. But she has been on the go since the middle of May, so she might fall off the wall quite soon.
The Scirocco Star has run a series of creditable races this season, Steve, and even last time out at what has been a tough season for her, she's still showing high-class form.
She is. I sort of felt she should have won that day, though. I tried blinkers on first time, and I'm not sure they weren't needed. I'd like to see her get ahead in front. She's had a tough arse, but I thought she came to win a race the other day and didn't.
I bow to no one in my admiration for Great Evans, but I am concerned about the fact that she's about to have a very quick run after what looked like a hard race in the Arc.
She'll love the soft ground. We know all of her family do. So if she's at her best, she is probably justifiably the favourite, but there is a question mark whether she is at her best.
The defending champion in the Fillies and Mares race, Dancing Rain, is back to defend her crown, but we haven't seen her in almost a year.
No, there's been problems. We haven't seen her since Japan. She had a great time of things last year. Besides winning this, she won an Oaks, she won a big race in Germany.
I suppose I'm worried about the fact that it hasn't been a sort of straightforward recovery from a setback. She was due to come back in August time, and then there was another problem. That double whammy, I think, is too much.
Dermot Wells sends over his filly Sapphire for this race. She's built up a tremendous record this season, but she did meet with defeat against Izzy Top, although 10 furlongs.
Yeah, I think she likes the mile and a half. I think that's important to her. I think some cutting the ground, which she did have for the Irish Pretty Polly, is also important to her. I think she's very, very likeable, very consistent, an improved performer this season. I think she needs to improve a smidgen more to get involved here, but I have no doubt she'll win her race and do her connections proud.
I'm going for Sapphire. I think she's improving and she'll have all the conditions in her favour.
I'm going for Great Evans. At her best, she's simply a cut above these.
I'm going for Was. There's ifs and buts about many, but she'll run her race.
Well, the big race on Champions Day over a mile is the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. The favourite is Excelebration. We can hear from his trainer, Aidan O'Brien.
He's good form, Richie, since his last run, and obviously the QE2 is the race we were looking at, so far so good with him.
Do you feel that without Frankel he's the best miler around?
Obviously he's a very good horse. He was a very good horse last year and a very good horse the year before it. He ran great races this year. Obviously he was second to Frankel twice, and then he went to France and won nicely, so he's obviously a very good horse.
The only time he's been beaten twice this year is by Frankel. Every time he hasn't met him, he's won, and he won a really good race in France the last time we saw him. So he's entitled to be favourite. It's easy to say he's the one to beat. Is he so far ahead of the others, which is to justify being the sort of price he looks like being? I would argue no. I don't think he's so far ahead. He's the most likely winner, but I think at the odds, I think there's other horses I would prefer.
I was really quite surprised how short he was in the anti-post betting for this race. And whilst I do think, like Steve, he's the most likely winner, I think he's a bit too short. He's 5 times seen Frankel's backside. I thought it was marvellous for Frankel and for him that he managed to win the Jacques Le Marois, a really strong Jacques Le Marois, really well. But I think he is too short in this race, and other horses represent better value.
The colours of Frankel will be carried by Cityscape in the QE2. Now, he's a horse who wasn't far behind X-Celebration in France, but he has had a run since then, and by all accounts, he wasn't at his best.
He did seem to be slightly below his best. But prior to that, I thought he ran really well, a really good second behind X-Celebration in the Jacques Le Marois. He didn't stay the Eclipse Trip. I thought he would. He's going to handle the ground. He's going to run his race. I can see him definitely being in the frame. He's a very likeable horse. He's a very striking horse, isn't he, with his big white face.
He's got a length and a bit to find on X-Celebration in French form. The conditions will be softer. I think that will bring him a lot closer. That's sort of what I mean about the difference in prices. It's not a mile behind on conditions which probably were more favourable to X-Celebration last time.
Her Majesty the Queen will be here at Ascot on Champions Day, and there is a strong possibility that she could see something that will make her very happy in the shape of her horse Carlton House running very well in the big race, the QE2.
His best performance this year came when second to So You Think in the Prince of Wales Stakes here at Royal Ascot. He then was dropped back to a mile. They were thinking about that early in the season because he had an entry in the Queen Anne which he didn't take up. They tried the summer mile here on the round course at Ascot. He got a wide draw, he pulled really hard. There was still an element of the way that he travelled and moved into the race that I still quite liked. I'm inclined to forgive him. He comes back from a long break now, and I think he's probably underestimated at the moment.
I'm really interested in the fresh angle. I think a lot of his best form has come after a break. I think the break he's had now is a plus for him, not a minus.
One of the best miling fillies around, certainly amongst the classic generation, is Elusive Kate, who did very well last time out despite having some issues at the start.
Yeah, she was really unfortunate in the Sun Chariot, I thought. She stumbled badly right at the start, and in the end when she was led away I think she was bandaged and they were a bit concerned about it. She'd wrenched a shoe off. I think she was unfortunate not quite to get to see Uma. It looks like she handles some cut in the ground. I mean, although her trainers always maintain that she's best on top of the ground, she seemed to handle it in the Falmouth Stakes when she was second to Giofra there. So I think she's going to run her race. A really good third, well ridden behind X-Celebration in the Jacques Le Marois. She'll run her race, she'll run really well. She's a high-class filly. I don't think she's good enough.
Well, I think Carlton House, after his break and over a mile on soft ground, has got a big chance to win the QE2.
The obviously overpriced horse in the race for me is Carlton House. Back him each way. I think he's got a chance of winning.
Cityscape for me. He's a good horse on good ground. He's a better horse on soft ground. The preeminent equine superstar of the world, Frankel, makes his final appearance in the Kipco Champion Stakes this Saturday. Unbeaten in his previous 13 starts, barely threatened in most, he is without doubt a horse of a lifetime. When his 2012 campaign began in the Lockinge back in May, we asked whether he could put his claim to greatness beyond all doubt. His devastating performance in the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot answered that question quickly and definitively. If anything, he has proved even more dominant as a 4-year-old than last year, and in showing equal superiority over 10 furlongs as a mile, he's also proved his versatility. Yet the fact remains he's never ventured to a mile and a half, nor beyond English borders. So is he the greatest of all time? Some would still give that title to Brigadier Gerard. Others would argue for Dancing Brave. Dancing Brave has the edge in versatility. He was scintillating in the 1986 Guineas over a mile, superb in the Eclipse over 10 furlongs, and supreme in the Arc over a mile and a half. It is this performance in which he beat emphatically what is widely agreed was one of the most competitive fields ever assembled, on which his claim overwhelmingly rests. Yet he was less dominant in the King George, unluckily defeated in the Derby, ran poorly in America, swam in more shallow waters than either Frankel or Brigadier Gerard as a 2-year-old, and, retired at 3, lacked their durability too. Brigadier Gerard flourished for 3 full seasons, from 2 to 4 in the early 70s, and was outstanding in each. Like Frankel, he was a champion both over a mile and 10 furlongs. Unlike Frankel, he also won a top-class race at a mile and a half, his sole attempt at the trip in the 1972 King George. But nostalgia forgets this length-and-a-half defeat of Parnell, whom he hampered, sparking a lengthy steward's inquiry, was vastly inferior to his form over shorter trips. The Brigadier had other moments of vulnerability, scraping home a couple of times in the mud and famously suffering a shock defeat by Roberto at York. On their best form, it's hard to be dogmatic about which of the three is the greatest. But for sheer, consistent brilliance, personally, I'd give it to Frankel. The hallmark of his 13 straight victories to date, including 9 Group 1s, is that bar the St James's Palace Stakes, when his rider got the tactics wrong, he's been totally and utterly dominant, not just beating his rivals, but slamming them. Besides death and taxes, Frankel has been the only certainty of my lifetime.
And so we come to the big one, the Qipco Champion Stakes, and the last appearance on a racecourse of the one and only, the great Frankel. It's a sad day, but it's something that we, in racing, have been waiting a long time for. He faces a huge test.
He does. He faces something new. We've been out on the track. We've talked about how testing the round course Ascot can get. Rain set to continue to come. It could very much play against him, that, because it'd be unproven on ground like that. It's a new thing for him.
Steve, everyone has wanted him to be tested to the limit of his ability so we can see fully what he's capable of. Is he going to have that test in the Champion Stakes?
I think he's beaten lots of very, very good horses, but he's got a new one in last year's champion, in Sirius Zegles, who proved in France recently that he's at the absolute peak of his powers, and of course he won the race last year, so that allied to the ground gives him a different test and a very severe one.
In these conditions, I think Sirius Zegles could be the single most difficult test that Frankel has had to encounter, not only because I think it possibly plays to Sirius Zegles' absolute strengths, testing ground over 10 furlongs and again coming to the race seemingly in the form of his life against an unknown for Frankel. People have been talking about they want to see a proper race of Frankel go to the Arc. I understand wanting to see him run over a mile and a half, but make no mistake, this is a proper race, definitely his toughest ever.
John Gosden's Nathaniel is also a big player in this race. Now, there's been an argument that he's better over 12 furlongs than 10. However, he is a proven Group 1 winner over 10 furlongs.
Oh, he is genuinely a top-class horse. Of course, they've met Frankel before. They met on their debuts. Their racecourse debuts. Frankel first, Nathaniel second in a little maiden at Newmarket. And it could be that they end their career in a little race called the Champion Stakes Ascot. It's incredible. I think on form, good as he is, he beat Fahar in the Eclipse. He's not that far ahead of St Nicholas Abbey in the Irish Champion. We saw what Frankel did to those two horses, or he's done to Fahar twice, and what he did to those two horses at York, I think tells you why Frankel is so great. Softer ground, it might be different. It might bring them closer together. In terms of pure ability, Frankel's definitely, in my opinion, got the edge on Nathaniel.
Declaration of War is lightly raced but very progressive. We can hear from his trainer, Aidan O'Brien.
We didn't get him till late, but he's came forward with every run. Won very nicely at the Curragh before Dundalk, won nicely in Dundalk, a slow run race, and quickened up very well. So he's a horse by Warfront, and he's a horse we're looking forward to seeing him running. But like you said, he is progressing with every run. He's a good moving horse, plenty of speed. Obviously he's ran in soft and heavy ground, but that's the way it was.
He looks a stayer. These conditions again will help. He's a Group 3 winner last time out. He proved himself in the mud the time before. He's going the right way, but this is just mighty, mighty good company, and it's an absolutely massive leap to think he can figure here.
It can only be a win for Frankel, but I think Nathaniel is certainly going to be placed.
In betting terms, I think Sirius Zegles is the obvious one each way. However, I can't see him, even in his most optimum conditions, actually beating Frankel, who I expect to retire 14 from 14 and splendid.
I think it's more difficult than the market suggests. In soft ground, I think Sirius Zegles is a really, really serious threat. I can't envisage defeat for Frankel. I think it might be more difficult than normal, but I still think he'll come through.
Well, that's just about it for this year's shows on British Champion Series TV, presented by Armchair Jockeys. Lydia, Steve and myself have thoroughly enjoyed bringing you these previews. There is just one more big race day to go, Qipco British Champions Day, and the very last appearance on a British racecourse of the great Frankel. Savour it. From the three of us, bye-bye.
Bye.